300 light-years from Earth, in a region of space that has no name in any human language, an object the size of a small moon opens one eye. It has been asleep for 11,000 years. Not dead. Dormant. Built by a species that calls itself, in the closest translation, the Wardens. The Wardens do not colonize. They do not conquer. They watch. And when a young civilization grows too loud, too fast, too unpredictable, they prune it. Quietly. Before it can spread. The eye. A sensor array older than the pyramids. It has been listening to a faint, stuttering signal for 2 centuries. A signal that started as almost nothing. A few sparks of electricity jumping across a wire. Then a voice, crackling through static, announcing that a war had ended. Then pictures. Then a laugh, recorded and sent to the stars by accident, riding on the back of a television broadcast never meant to leave the atmosphere. The Wardens call the signal designation, blue static. Humans call it radio. For 200 years, the signal did what every young civilization signal does. It grew, but slowly, predictably, the way the Wardens models expect. A species discovers electricity. It fights over land. It builds machines. It kills its own in wars that repeat with tired familiarity, generation after generation, planet after planet. The Wardens have watched this pattern unfold 9,000 times across 9,000 worlds, and 9,000 times, they knew exactly what would happen next. But 8 years ago, something in the pattern broke. The signal from the little blue planet stopped behaving. It didn't slow down. It didn't follow the curve. It didn't wage the great final war the models predicted. The one that either destroys a species or humbles it into slow, cautious growth. Instead, the humans kept building. Faster. Messy. Millions of them, all at once, all talking to each other, all solving problems in parallel instead of one government, one committee, one careful decision at a time. The Wardens models are built on a simple assumption. Intelligence flows downward, from the top of a civilization to the bottom. Kings to soldiers. Governments to citizens. Remove the head, and the body stops moving. They have never encountered a species that grows its intelligence sideways. The great eye blinks fully open. Deep inside the dormant moon ship, systems that have not drawn power in 11 millennia begin to hum. A decision, made by a council of minds so old they no longer remember individual names, only designations and duties, has finally been reached. Blue static must be assessed. And if necessary, corrected. The first Warden scout arrives above Earth on a Tuesday. Nobody notices. It is not a saucer, not a cigar-shaped craft hovering over a cornfield. It is a needle of dark matter lensing material, smaller than a grain of rice, riding in low orbit, invisible to every telescope on the planet. Its job is simple. Listen. Categorize. Report. For 3 weeks, it listens to everything. Every satellite ping. Every cell tower. Every open network. And what it finds unsettles even a machine built by a species that has never known fear the way humans do. It finds forums where teenagers debug rocket engines they will never build, just for the joy of solving the problem, and post the answers for free. It finds a woman in Nairobi who designs a low-cost water filter and gives the blueprint away rather than selling it, because she wants every village to have clean water by next year, not just the ones who can pay. It finds an open-source encyclopedia edited by strangers who will never meet, correcting each other's mistakes within minutes, with no king, no committee, no central authority telling them to do it. The Wardens models call this behavior inefficient, redundant, chaotic. A civilization without a single point of command should collapse under the weight of its own disagreement. Instead, it accelerates. The scout begins running quiet tests. It nudges a power grid in the American Midwest. A tiny fluctuation, a rolling brownout that shouldn't be possible given the grid's redundancies. Within 6 hours, 3 separate engineering teams. 1 municipal. 1 from a university. 1 a group of hobbyists on an internet forum. Have independently traced the anomaly, patched around it, and posted their findings publicly so it can never happen the same way twice. The scout tries again. It corrupts a shipment of satellite navigation data over the Pacific, hoping to trigger the kind of confusion that would, on any of the 9,000 other worlds, cause panic, blame, and infighting. Instead, within 40 minutes, a 19-year-old graduate student in Manila. Working alone. On a laptop. For no pay and no glory. Notices the anomaly in a public data set, writes a correction algorithm, and shares it online before breakfast. By lunch, half the shipping industry in Southeast Asia is using her fix. The scout reports back to the great ship, still asleep at the edge of the solar system, one word repeated in its data burst like a confession. Anomalous. 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 The Council of Wardens convenes. Ancient minds, patient beyond human comprehension, review the data in silence for what would be, in Earth time, several days. Their conclusion is unanimous, and it is the first time in recorded warden history that a species has ever earned this classification. Blue Static does not have a single point of failure. Its intelligence does not live in its leaders. It lives in its people. All of them. Everywhere. At once. Recommendation. Full contact is too dangerous. A single strike against the collective is inefficient. The collective simply reroutes around any wound. New strategy required. That is when one of the younger wardens, younger meaning it has only existed for 4,000 years, proposes something the council has never had to consider before. If the intelligence is distributed, find the node from which the sharpest new patterns originate. Every distributed system still has outliers. Points where the signal is strongest. Find that point. Remove it. Watch the network falter. The council studies Earth's data for this outlier. And they find her. Her name is Maya Osebrandt. She is 10 years old, and she lives in a small house at the end of a cul-de-sac in a mid-sized American town, the kind of place with one traffic light and a diner that's been open since 1962. Maya is not famous. She has no social media account of her own, her mother doesn't allow it yet. But 6 months ago, bored during a rainstorm, she took her father's old ham radio kit and rebuilt it into something that could pick up signals from amateur satellites, just to see if she could. Then she noticed the signal had gaps in it, tiny, rhythmic gaps that shouldn't exist in a clean broadcast. She didn't know she was looking at compression artifacts caused by something skimming the data stream in low orbit. She just thought it was a fun puzzle. She wrote a simple program, genuinely simple, the kind of code a bright 10-year-old with a patient father who works in aerospace software might write on a Saturday afternoon, that filled in the gaps by predicting the missing data from the pattern around it. Her father, astonished, posted her fix on an amateur radio forum, tagged with her first name and her age, because he was proud, the way parents are proud of small, wonderful things their children do. That single post is why the wardens found her. Because buried in Maya's simple gap-filling code was an idea their models had never seen before. Instead of treating the missing data as an error to root around, she treated it as a question, as information about the thing that caused the gap. Her program didn't just patch the hole. It profiled the shape of whatever had made it. In doing so, without knowing it, without meaning to, 10-year-old Maya Osebrandt had written the first line of code in human history capable of detecting a warden scout. The council does not see a child. Children, as a concept, mean very little to a species that has outlived 100,000 generations of their own young. What they see is a statistical outlier, a mind producing solutions with a strange, sideways creativity their models cannot map. In their language, they do not call her Maya. They call her Node Prime. Their reasoning is cold, and in its own broken way, it is not cruel, it is simply alien. Remove Node Prime. Study whether the network of human ingenuity weakens without her. If it does, the species is more centralized than believed, and a full strategy of containment becomes possible. If it does not, a new understanding of distributed intelligence must be built, but at least the immediate threat, the fastest growing point in the network, will be gone. It is, in the coldest possible sense, an experiment. And Maya is the variable. 3 warden extraction drones are dispatched from the scout ship, now hidden behind the moon. They are small, fast, and built to be gentle. The wardens do not wish to harm what they study, only to remove it. Their instructions are simple: locate Node Prime, extract without unnecessary damage, return for analysis. They do not know, cannot know, because their models have no category for it, that the moment they target a child, they will stop facing a distributed network of strangers solving interesting problems for fun. They will be facing a mother, a father, a town, and eventually a species, all of whom have just discovered exactly what they're willing to do to protect one of their own. It begins with the dogs. Every dog on Maya Street starts barking at 11:47 p.m. all at once, for no reason anyone can see. Then the street lights flicker, not the slow dim of a power fluctuation, but a sharp, precise stutter, 3 times, then darkness. Maya's father, David, is still awake in his home office, running late on a work deadline. He is one of maybe 40,000 people in the world with exactly the right knowledge to notice something is wrong. He spent 6 years writing anomaly detection software for a satellite company before switching to a quieter job so he could be home for dinner more often. When his phone's weather app glitches, showing a perfectly clear sky as a storm cell moving at 400 miles an hour, his hands go cold before his mind catches up to why. He doesn't know what's happening. But every instinct honed by years of chasing signal errors tells him this is not a glitch. This is something moving. Upstairs, Maya wakes because her ham radio kit, unplugged and off since dinner, is quietly powering itself on, its small speaker crackling with a rhythm that isn't static. It's a pattern. 3 pulses, a pause, 3 pulses, the exact shape of the gap pattern she taught her program to recognize 6 months ago. She doesn't feel fear yet. She feels the specific, electric curiosity of a child who has just been handed the best puzzle of her life. Outside, the 3 drones descend without sound, invisible to radar, invisible to the eye except for a faint bending of streetlight, like heat shimmer on a summer road. They are 11 seconds from the house. This is the part of the story that the warden's models could never have predicted, because it isn't a strategy. It's a reflex. David doesn't call the police, because there's nothing to report. He doesn't hesitate, doesn't rationalize, doesn't waste a single second on disbelief. He simply moves down the hall, into Maya's room, scooping her up mid-sentence as she's asking him what the pattern in the radio means, and he does the one thing every parent on earth, in every country, in every century, has done when something threatens their child. He puts his body between her and the door. At the exact same moment, 3 streets away, Maya's mother, Ada, a nurse just finishing a night shift, sees the same impossible weather glitch on her own phone and, without being told anything, turns her car around and starts driving home at a speed that would terrify her on any normal night. The first drone breaches the upstairs window. What happens next takes 4 seconds, and no camera catches it, so it will never trend online, never make the news, never become a legend. It is small and human, and it is the reason the warden's entire predictive model of Homo sapiens is about to be proven wrong. David grabs the only thing within reach, Maya's radio kit, still humming with that 3-pulse pattern, and swings it, out of pure animal instinct, directly into the drone's sensor cluster. It is not a weapon. It is a $10 soldering project built by a child. But it strikes exactly the vulnerable point Maya's own code had, hours earlier, and without either of them knowing it, mapped for a completely different purpose. The drone sparks, spins, and crashes into the wall, its system screaming an alert back to the ship in a language no human will ever translate: unexpected resistance. Node Prime's environment is not undefended. Recommend reassessment. The second and third drones pull back from the window, hovering, recalculating. For the first time in 11,000 years of quiet, surgical interventions across 9,000 worlds, a warden extraction has failed at the very first contact. Maya, held tight against her father's chest, stares at the sparking wreck of alien technology on her bedroom floor, and says the only thing a very smart, very brave 10-year-old could possibly say in that moment: "That's not from here." By dawn, the story could have died as a strange, unexplainable family emergency, a break-in, a malfunction, something the family would spend years quietly trying to understand alone. Instead, it does the one thing the warden's models say should be statistically impossible for an isolated household event: it spreads. David, still shaking, does not call a government hotline that doesn't exist for this. He does what he has done his whole career: when he hits a problem too strange to solve alone, he posts it. Not the truth, not yet, because who would believe it? He posts the sensor readings. The scorched fragment, photographed on the kitchen table. The 3-pulse pattern from Maya's radio. He posts it to the same small, strange, wonderful community of hobbyists and engineers where he found his daughter's fix 6 months ago, with one simple line: "Something hit my house last night, and it isn't from any lab I know of. Can anyone identify this material?" Within an hour, an amateur astronomer in Chile, checking the metadata out of curiosity, notices that 3 other reports: a down drone-like object in rural Kenya, an unexplained material sample recovered by a fisherman off the coast of Japan, and a strange 3-pulse radio anomaly logged by a teenager in Norway, all share the exact same signature. None of these people know each other. None of them work for any government. There is no committee, no chain of command, no single mind directing them. There is only a pattern, visible to anyone paying attention, and thousands of strangers who have spent their whole lives training themselves, for fun, for pride, for the sheer joy of solving things, to notice patterns other people miss. This is the moment the Warden Council, still watching from behind the moon, realizes their mistake. Their entire strategy assumed that removing Node Prime or failing that, isolating the threat around her would work because intelligence, in every one of the 9,000 species they have observed before, flows from a center outward. Cut the center, and the edges go dark. But humanity's center is not a place. It is not a person. It is not even Maya, brilliant as she is. It is the habit repeated, individually, by millions of ordinary people, of sharing what they know for free, of trusting strangers enough to build on each other's work, of treating curiosity itself as a kind of quiet, permanent act of collective defense. By that evening, 43 independent research groups across 19 countries, university labs, hobbyist forums, a handful of quietly alarmed government scientists who caught wind of the pattern through back channels are working the same problem from 43 different angles, sharing results faster than any single organization could process them. Maya, sitting at her kitchen table with her father, exhausted, scared, and still the smartest person in the room, looks at the flood of messages pouring in from strangers around the world who picked up her original 6-month-old radio fix and are now using it, refined 100 different ways, to track the exact frequency the drones use to communicate. She turns to her father and says something that will, eventually, be the sentence historians use to open every account of that year: they tried to unplug one computer. They didn't realize the whole internet was already the brain. The Warden Council, for the first time in recorded history, orders a full tactical retreat of the extraction team and authorizes something they have never once needed before across 9,000 prior civilizations: direct force. Minimal. Contained. One final attempt to silence Node Prime before the network fully organizes. 3 larger craft, no longer bothering with stealth, begin descending toward Maya's town at 9:14 p.m. What happens over the next 2 hours will later be called, by the handful of scientists who eventually piece it together, the shortest war in history. It lasts 111 minutes, is fought without a single official soldier, and is won by a network of exhausted, ordinary people working from kitchen tables, dorm rooms, and a nurse's dashboard phone mount, guided by the discoveries of one very tired 10-year-old girl. The 3 Warden craft arrive over the town with a directive that, translated as closely as human language allows, means something like end the anomaly, minimize further data contamination. They are not designed for combat. The Wardens have never needed real weapons, only precision. But precision requires prediction, and prediction requires a pattern to follow. And the town below no longer has one. The 43 research groups, coordinating now through a single shared channel Maya's father set up almost as a joke 3 hours earlier, have done something the Warden's models never accounted for: they've turned the town's own power grid, the same grid the first scout tested weeks ago, into an early warning net, using the exact gap detection method Maya wrote for fun on a rainy Saturday, scaled up 1,000 times over by strangers who built on her idea without ever asking permission. Because that is simply how they've always worked. Every flicker, every anomaly, every shimmer of bent light gets logged, shared, and triangulated in real time by people who have never met and never will. The town's mayor, alerted by a very strange, very specific phone call from a Norwegian teenager's father through a chain of increasingly improbable connections, does the only thing available to her: she calls a town-wide alert, framed as a severe weather warning, and asks everyone to stay inside, lights off, phones charged. It isn't a plan. It's 1,000 small, uncoordinated acts of trust, arriving at the same moment. The Warden craft, unable to get a clean read through a town gone suddenly, deliberately dark and unpredictable, begin running the same diagnostic loop over and over, searching for the pattern that should be there and finding only silence, static, and the occasional burst of a rhythm that looks almost like their own signal but isn't quite, because somewhere in the last 2 hours, someone in the shared channel figured out how to mimic the 3-pulse pattern and started broadcasting decoys from 6 different houses at once. At 10:41 p.m. the lead Warden craft, its confusion routines finally exhausted, does something the council will spend a very long time trying to understand: it stops. It does not fire. It does not extract. It simply hangs, silent, 300 feet above the town, running the same question through its ancient processors again and again, translated roughly as, Where is the center? There is no answer, because there is no center. There is only Maya, asleep now against her father's shoulder in a dark, quiet living room, having done everything she could do, and then, being 10 years old and utterly exhausted, having finally fallen asleep in the middle of the biggest night of her life. There is her father, holding her, watching a shimmer in the sky through the window and feeling, for the first time all night, something closer to calm than fear. There is a nurse driving the last mile home with her headlights off, guided only by a stranger's voice on speakerphone telling her which streets are dark. There are 43 research groups, a Norwegian teenager, a Kenyan engineer, a Chilean astronomer, and thousands of quiet, ordinary people who will never know each other's names, all doing the same small thing at the same time for no reason except that it seemed like the right thing to do. The lead craft transmits one final message to the sleeping ship behind the moon, and then withdraws, followed by the other two, rising silently back into the dark. The message, translated as closely as it ever will be, reads, "Recommend indefinite postponement of contact. Species does not have a center. Species is the center. Full reassessment."